If you like this video, please click the like button. If you want more content, click subscribe. If you click that little bell and click all, then you'll get more content notifications. Hello everyone, this is Venus Brown. I will be doing a review and discussion of House of the Dragon Season 1, Episode 6, called The Princess and the Queen. In this episode, we get to see a lot of the rivalry that has continued on since the last episode. We start out seeing a scene with Rhaenyra giving birth to now her third child, so we completely missed the first and second child. And that scene, of course, had a lot of gushy, ushy, squishy sounds of labor and delivery. It was not pleasant, but that is the reality, folks. That's how labor and delivery goes. And directly following that delivery, we hear that Alicent, the queen, has ruled that she must bring the baby to her at once, which to me is completely out of line. I don't give a damn what kind of vendetta you have. You don't go telling some new mom that she needs to present her baby to you right after giving birth. That's fucking ridiculous. Go away, Alicent. We don't need this kind of shit. No way. And of course, Rhaenyra is questioning, why is she asking? And when she tells Laenor, Laenor also asks why, like, why on earth are you asking us to bring our baby right after giving birth? Like, Rhaenyra should be in bed. Rhaenyra's baby should be with her. Rhaenyra's baby should certainly not be on a trek up a bunch of stairs to go and see the queen, who's apparently too freaking lazy to get her ass downstairs to go and see it herself. We find out fairly quickly that, of course, Alicent has an agenda to requesting that this baby be brought to her. And I don't know if Alicent expected Rhaenyra to just stay downstairs and let somebody else take the baby, but I think she probably knew that Rhaenyra is not the type of person that's just going to go and let her rivaling former best friend who married her dad and screwed her over investigate her brand new baby right after it was born. And that's what she's doing. She's inspecting it to see, is this baby anything like Laenor? While completely ignoring the big elephant in the room, that most of the people know that Laenor is gay, and the reality that Rhaenyra is not having his kids isn't really that much of a surprise, but she's acting like, oh, it's this big freaking surprise and there's this big problem with it. And maybe to her it is a problem, but I'm sorry. It's just everything she did with that entire situation was completely inappropriate. I don't give a damn if it's Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. I don't give a damn if it's Westeros. And this is how your queen acts. It's inappropriate. You're doing the wrong thing, girl. This isn't how it should go. And while the baby is up there, the king gets to see the new baby, and he's got all the praisings of his new grandchild, and talks about what a great night he's gonna be. And of course the king is looking completely horrid, but he's at least not collapsing on the floor and bleeding from his nose or wherever it was like the last time we saw him. So maybe one of those meisters is doing something right this time. Don't know, but he's still looking quite creepy and decrepit. Sorry, King Viserys, but can't lie. And then, of course, we get to the point of the entire scene. Alicent takes the baby and looks at the baby very closely, because what are we looking for? There's no silver hair, but of course this baby doesn't have any hair right now, so we can't really garner a whole heck of a lot of information about that. But this baby does not have the long aquiline nose like Laenor has. This baby has the short little pudgy nose. Not very different from my own. But yeah, not Laenor's nose. But Who would have guessed that? Who would have thought that the gay lord that you set up with your straight princess are not having legitimate children right now? Who would have thought it? And yes, I know Lenore could do his duty and make at least one legitimate child, but things don't always go the way you plan. Babies don't always get born when you try to. And frankly, two people that don't have that kind of chemistry may not want to keep trying and trying and trying if they're not able to succeed right away. And they may not want to try at all. More power to them. Let them go. But before Alicent lets anybody leave the room, she can't let Laenor get away without her little smug comment. Soon as late, you might get one that looks like you. Yeah, that's not telling at all. Not telling at all. We also, after this whole fiasco finishes up, we get to meet who is most likely the children's biological father, Harwin Strong. And that is an interesting arrangement that they have, but I'm all for it. Allow the legal father to play the duties of father and then hand it over to the biological father so he can have some alone time with his children as well. That's fine by me. But we know this is Game of Thrones. This is considered a royal period in their history where maybe a lot of that stuff would be looked down upon by the people, but I think just let them do their thing. Give the kids a father, and frankly, give them a second father. Why not? Give them as much support as they can get because they're frankly gonna need it. And then as Laenor's leaving the room, he sends the older children down to the dragon pit so that they can engage in some dragon pit training, which was very interesting to see. I think back on the first episode, I was trying to remember what is the terminology that we've heard repeatedly in Game of Thrones for speaking to the dragons, like Dracarys, which we hear multiple times in this episode. Either way, it was very interesting to see the kids learning the commands and how to give the commands and all of that. But then, of course, we have teenage and preteen boys who do the things that teenagers do, and especially family members who want to show up themselves and who want to make fun of the smaller, weaker, or not as able child. And they're going to want to make whatever things that they see as flaws look very bad to the other child. So the older child, Aegon, presents to his little brother, who still does not have a dragon yet, a dragon that he has found out in the wild. And his brother asks him how, and of course, it's just a big old joke. And they have presented this child with a pig with fake wings, and even made a joke about the first time riding it and everything. So of course the child feels very humiliated. I think this was Aemon, because they're making fun of him about his inability to get a dragon. And I said in the reaction that I shouldn't let this stuff bother me, but bullying does bother me. When other people get their humor, get their entertainment by causing misery for other people, I just don't like that. I just feel like there's other ways to get your entertainment. It doesn't have to be at the humiliation or the misery of somebody else. And of course, later on, Alicent has to deal with how you handle the discipline of your child possibly bullying their younger child, or finding out if it was your child or if it was their children or both of them. And she seems to have some understanding that this is partially led by her child. I'm glad she didn't act like Cersei did, like her like her children can't do any wrong, and like whatever anybody else is saying about them is totally wrong. I'm glad she didn't do that. At least on some hand, it looks like she's trying to raise decent children. That's not always the easiest thing, but she's at least trying. Later in the episode, we also get to see the kids doing another kind of training, which is sword training, using their little wood swords on each other. And Kristen Cole is leading these classes. We eventually see Harwin Strong come up and start to interact with his kids. But he's doing this in public where everybody can see it, and it doesn't look totally appropriate. Then he starts fussing at Cole for the way that he is teaching the class, because Cole is definitely giving more individual attention to Allison's kids and barely any to Rhaenyra's kids. So it does look off. It is something that I would definitely call out and correct if I saw it. But we're talking about a different realm. We're talking about a different place with different expectations. So just because I think I would call out something like that doesn't mean that it would be expected that somebody else in that realm would necessarily call out. Now, I have seen plenty of other fictional shows that try to present a kind of old style royal court training of children, and seeing one of the Knights Guards or somebody like that come up and interact with the person giving the classes would not be unusual, but this is a different realm, so maybe in this realm that is unusual. Either way, it looks bad. And Harwin doesn't just stop at correcting his method of training or his lack of focus on the Rhaenyra kids. He keeps on interacting. And then he starts throwing a little temper tantrum. I don't blame him. I really don't. But he is doing it right in public where everybody else can see. And this stuff does get out. It gets out to the small folk, it gets out to the big folk, and everybody starts hearing about it and whispering about it, and it can cause a lot of problems. So really not a good idea. And then he ends up getting in a fight with the guy, so that definitely didn't look good either. They certainly, in this episode, did nothing really to address the fiasco that was the end of the last episode. And the very fact that they're drawing attention to Harwin Strong striking and fighting Kristen Cole in this episode does bring up the question, what about the last episode, which I know is supposed to be 10 years ago, where Kristen Cole was beating the crap out of somebody in the royal court, somebody under the king's roof that is supposed to be under his protection? What about that? We don't get to hear anything about that. And that is something that I find frustrating. The very fact that the last episode was very chaotic and confusing. While I could garner some information off of the internet and from other people talking about it and coming up with the ideas that they have, somebody else that's not on the internet, they're not going to get that information, and they have to just try to piece together whatever they can from what they're seeing in the episode and in the next episode. And this episode does nothing to address the last episode. Not really. It does a little bit here and there. We get little bits of understanding of some of that, but certainly nothing about that ridiculous fight at the end of the episode. And I've heard other people talking about the way that the time jumps are presented, how, like, in some series, they might do it at the end of a season, or they might do it at the halfway point in the season. And this is technically the halfway point in the season, but there is no break or gap. Whereas some series shows will get like a break or gap in between so that people have time to digest what happened and to figure things out on their own. We didn't have any of that for this one. And I don't know. I don't like the way this time jump was done. And I don't really know how you can fix it. But I do feel like when I've watched episodes of The Crown and they switched from one time frame to another, it was always when it was a new season. And I felt like that was just so much easier to digest. It was so much easier to get around and to be okay with, to swallow. Now, I don't know if they could do that because of the time frame that they are trying to cover within this season. And I don't know how far they are planning on going in Targaryen history within this season. So I don't know if it would be even feasible to wait until there's a gap or wait until there's going to be a new season. So then we have to deal with, how do you present a big time jump in the middle of the season? And some people have said that they really like this. I don't particularly like the big time jumps. The small time jumps I was fine with. The small time jumps I think are much more feasible and easier to understand. They're just hard for my little pea brain to comprehend. Because there is obviously a lot going on around the court, around the castle, in town, where people are definitely noticing that something is amiss about these Rhaenyra children. That maybe these Rhaenyra children aren't really Laenor's. But I still feel like when you are talking about a situation where a prince or princess have been intentionally married off to somebody that they have no chemistry with, that is not the same sexuality, that for whatever reason they are not compatible sexually, that sometimes you get situations where one or the other may stray off to somebody else in order to do what is expected. And while having a legitimate child from your legally married spouse is going to be considered part of your duty, there, I think, are still situations where we know that there are children that are not legitimately those married partners, and somehow they make it work. I would think that in this situation, they would somehow make it work. Now, I think because Alicent has ulterior motives, she is letting this get to her a lot more than she really should. And she is interjecting in ways that are really not a good idea. To her, maybe she thinks that if she gets Rhaenyra in trouble, that she can get the king to shift the heir to her son. Maybe that's what she's after. But the reality is that those kind of rumors don't just hurt the person that they are about, they hurt the entire family. And sometimes in a place like Westeros, it can mean like the death of multiple family members. It can mean people losing their titles. It can mean people being sent to the wall. It can mean people being beheaded. And she's just playing around with these rumors like it's no big fucking deal. But it is a big fucking deal. The king refuses to hear her. Like, he is being blind. He's being intentionally blind and deaf. But she is being intentionally blind too. There is a real danger in even making insinuations about something like that about your family members, even if they are family members that you are that you are legally bound to, but not by blood. It's still a very dangerous game that she's playing. We see that when the Hand straight up tells the king that he's going to resign his position because his family name is in such disarray because of his son fighting with Kristen Cole in the courtyard, in the training yard. Yet Alicent still doesn't see the problem with her making a big stink about it. She doesn't see that. She sees this as the right thing for him to resign, for the king to let him go, or for the king to fire him. I just don't see how she thinks that that is of benefit to her. She gets mad when the Hand says, okay, if you're going to make me, if you're going to insist that I stay with you, I at least need to bring my son back in Harrenhal. And she gets mad about that too. Like, if you want this situation to at least stop, don't you think getting the baby daddy out of there is probably a wise idea? But no, I don't think that that's what she's after. I think she is really just after getting Rhaenyra in so much trouble that her child will be named heir to the throne, and Rhaenyra will lose her inheritance. But she is fucking playing with fire. And we kind of got to go back a little bit to the situation previously with Alicent and Otto Hightower, her father, because the path that Otto has laid in place for her, by raising her the way he has, by scaring her the way he has, by insisting that if Aegon is not made heir to the throne, that there will be this great war, and if Rhaenyra becomes queen, that Aegon will forfeit his life. Like, that stuff is having real consequences in this episode. I think if you look at history, if you look at the history of royal families, there are always situations where there is some family member or some situation where an inheritance might be in question, where who's going to be on the throne might be in question, and there are situations where family members are real threats. And some of them, yes, those threats are terminated in order to get rid of them. But some of them, they're not. You can look at history and you can see that there are other ways that those kinds of threats have been dealt with to make sure that the inheritance is safe, that the royal line of succession is safe, that the person in line to inherit the throne is safe, and that even that other person that might be a threat to them is actually safe. There are ways to do that. And we see a little bit of Rhaenyra trying to engage in some of that later on in the episode, and Alicent's not having any of it. Yes, there is very valid reason that Rhaenyra is doing it. It's not just to straighten paths for them. It is because she is under threat by the rumors going around the castle. But it's still the kind of thing that Alicent should be looking at. If she's really concerned that her child's life might be threatened, if she's really concerned that there's this threat of war, then she should be looking at whatever methods that she can to create safety for her child, to create a safe realm, to create a safe environment, and to hopefully squelch those threats from happening. And instead, she is only looking at one path: Aegon on the throne, Rhaenyra off the throne, and all-out war with Rhaenyra until then. I know this is how it is because this is House of the Dragon. This is a Game of Thrones show, and this is what is going to happen. But it does frustrate me. It does frustrate me that there can be deals made, there can be talks and proposals and schemes and things laid in place to help make things go Allison's way without causing wars, and she doesn't even try. And when one is presented to her that would actually work really well in that aspect, she completely brushes it aside because it's Rhaenyra's idea and because Rhaenyra's just throwing a temper tantrum because she's being caught with her lie. And honestly, it's not like royal families don't have lies like this seething throughout their entire family tree. They are a reality. And the family members at the top of those royal lines do have some ability to control how that looks and how it is dealt with. So I guess we should at least look at what the actual proposal was. So part of the proposal is that Alicent's daughter, Helena, gets married to Rhaenyra's son. And Alicent is upset. She mentions that she doesn't want her child being married off to their plain featured children. Of course, insinuating that these children are not full blood Valerian children. It is interesting that all of her children are brown haired because there are other Targaryens where they are married to somebody else with black or brown hair and still have silver haired children. Not always, but sometimes. Still, having Alicent's child married to one of Rhaenyra's child does kind of help to solidify the chance that she's not going to go and try to kill her kid. Rhaenyra wants to be in power, but she's not a hateful, spiteful person that's just going to go around killing her half siblings. At least not right now. Later on, we don't know because the future can change things. But right now, as it stands, Rhaenyra's not really that kind of person. And putting deals and proposals in place to help to soften that and make it less likely that any one family member is going to kill another family member is a good idea. Okay? The other part of this proposal is that they offer one of their dragon eggs to Aemon, who still does not fly. And that does help to deal with one of the problems that she's having currently with her children, that her youngest son is being made fun of for not being a dragon rider yet, for not having a dragon yet. And this would actually help him to get into a position where at least that is taken care of. Now, can Alicent get past the whole thing that Jacaerys is really not Laenor's kid? I don't know, but the people at the top of royal families do have a certain amount of control into how those things are seen, what is and isn't allowed, and to what royal traditions that they can get away with breaking to keep something like this from causing the kind of damage that just an all-out public campaign would cause by insisting that Rhaenyra's children are all bastards. That is just dangerous. And the people in the royal court can have control over making sure that that is not the message being sent out to the people, but she is just all about spreading it all over the place. And the dragon egg thing brings me to another part of the episode. We see Daemon is now married to Laena, and they have two kids, Baela and Rhaena. And Rhaena doesn't have a dragon yet. She is trying to get this dragon egg to hatch, but it isn't hatching yet. And she knows that her sister already has a dragon and already flies, and she does not. And their family is given this proposal that they can stay there at the castle that they're at indefinitely. They can gain ownership to. Lena would prefer to go back home. She has family she missed. She has duties that she would like to tend to. But Damon doesn't have the same experience. Damon has burned a lot of bridges with his family and with the court because he comes in and he destroys things. He wreaks havoc, and so he knows there is this reality. And I also think that in some ways he doesn't really want that whole like being in the line of secession and everything. Damon likes his freedom. Damon wants to be able to do the things that he wants to do. So they just don't see eye to eye on that. Of course, later on, we see that Lena has gone into labor and she is trying to deliver this baby, and they are asking her to push and push and push, but the baby is not coming. And you do see that the maester that was delivering the baby comes and talks to Damon. And unlike the situation with Viserys and Emma, Damon does not tell him to go and sacrifice the mom for the slight chance that the baby might live. But Lena hears this conversation and she knows that this baby isn't coming, and she decides to take matters into her own hands. And I will say that at least in this case, she used her own autonomy and she was able to decide for herself what was going to happen to her. I did not expect to see barbecued Lena. And it was really sad because I thought the new actress for Lena was awesome. She was doing a great job. I would have definitely liked to see a lot more of her. So it was really sad that they got rid of her right after her first episode. And it was really awful that she died by burning to death. In the books, I believe she delivered the baby. The baby died. I don't remember if it was stillborn. I think it died a little bit later, but I could be wrong. And then she was not doing well. She had said that when she finally died, she wanted to go out a dragon rider, and I knew that wasn't coming because of the books. But in the books, she delivers the baby dies. She is very, very weak, and she goes to try to ride the dragon. Like one last hurrah. Like I think she knew she wasn't gonna make it. She goes to ride the dragon and she can't do it. She's too weak. In this situation, she tries to deliver, she can't deliver, and she goes and commands the dragon, Dracarys, so that she is burned. Horrible way to go. My oldest kid always likes to tell me, well, Mom, you know that the book is not meant to be concrete information about the stories. And he's kind of right, but still. So I did want to talk a little bit about the foreshadowing because there are several spots in here. These are the ones that I noticed. The foreshadowing about what she said about wanting to go out riding a dragon. So that was one of them. Rhaenyra going into the room and the servants having her put compresses on her breasts to help deal with the pain from not breastfeeding, so that the milk can dry up and so that it can ease her breasts. And I felt like that was kind of foreshadowing for later on when she's at the meeting and her breasts start leaking. It's an unfortunate reality that it happens. I was kind of taken aback that Allison drew attention to it, because Alicent should have been there. She should have known how this is to an extent. Even if you breastfeed your children, you're still going to have problems with leakage and stuff like that. And she should have known and understood that this is something humiliating, and to call it out right in front of the council meeting, I thought was unseemly. I also think that, gosh damn, like there should be some clothing that just kind of drapes over that is either somehow leak proof or is just loose enough that it's not going to show all over the front of her clothes. The scene with Alicent and Helena, and Helena has, I believe it's a millipede, and she's counting the legs, and she's talking about the eyes and the fact that she believes that it can see. And that brings this interesting discussion, which is kind of repeated in a different way later on, about how some things just naturally happen even though we are not able to comprehend them. And that goes along with this idea that you cannot necessarily be sure that Rhaenyra's kids are not Laenor's kids, because stranger things happen in nature and we don't always have the ability to comprehend why they are that way. And that could be one of those things. It's likely not, but it could be. So I felt like it kind of went along with that. And later on, we see King Viserys telling Alicent this story about these foals and how this black foal got out and was impregnated by this white foal, and they end up with a foal that's chestnut. And you would think that it would have come out white or black or something to that effect, but somehow it's beyond our comprehension. Nature doesn't always go the way we plan. So I thought that was interesting, but that wasn't the major foreshadowing I was talking about. The major foreshadowing is when Alicent is talking to her son about riding a dragon, about him possibly eventually getting his own dragon, that she's confident that he will at some point get a dragon. And you hear Helena in the background. She's still doing her lesson with this millipede. She says he will have to close an eye. And I definitely think that is foreshadowing. Definitely think that is foreshadowing. And it was interesting how they presented it as she is doing this lesson and this is part of this lesson, yet it was still said in a way that definitely sounds like it could be foreshadowing for something to come. You will have to close an eye. There was something else she said that I think was also a bit of foreshadowing, but I don't remember right now what it was. The word Dracarys was used multiple times. They showed us with the kids saying Dracarys. We hear the dragon handlers telling them how once they are like bonded and they are taught these things, like they won't take direction from anybody else, that kind of thing. And that to me, that and then later on when Lena is riding the dragon with Daemon, and she calls Dracarys and causes this big, huge ball of flame, and Daemon goes riding right into it. That to me was also foreshadowing all the stuff with Dracarys happening in this episode. To me was definitely foreshadowing for the eventual scene with Lena having her dragon, Vagar, burn her. I think there was other stuff in there. If any of you spotted any other foreshadowing, put it in the comments. Let me know. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the scene where the Hand takes his son back to Harrenhal, and his other son, Larys, had hired these prisoners. He basically gave them their life in exchange for their tongues and their service, and hired them to go and set fire to Harrenhal and burn his brother and his dad to death. I don't remember if his dad dies. I don't know. Like, I couldn't really tell in the show if he actually dies, but it looks like his son is definitely gonna die, and I don't know if he's gonna die. So that's something that we'll have to look at next episode and find out if his dad lives. But I'm pretty confident Harwin does not live, and I don't think he lives in the book either. I did not know that Larys Strong was the one setting the fire, though. What a jackass son. What the hell? I think that's all I've got for you. If you can think of anything else, feel free to talk about it in the comments. I'll see you next time. Bye. If you like this video, please click the like button. If you want more content, click subscribe. If you click that little bell and click all, then you'll get more content notifications.